everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Alpha IVF Group podcast series, where fertility meets future. I'm Marcus from Alpha IVF Group, and I'm honored to be your host today as we begin this exciting journey together. Our topic for today is a very interesting one and also a very powerful one. It's titled Our Indonesia Expansion Playbook. To unpack all of this, we are joined by a truly distinguished guest, our Group Country Director of Indonesia, Siska Hernando. Welcome to the show, Siska.
Thank you, Marcus.
Before we deep dive into the questions, let me give a brief introduction of Siska. So Siska has over 10 years of experience in assisted reproductive technologies, all of this gained through her journey with Alpha IVF Group. She actually started as a deputy center manager here before moving into business development, where she grew both the local and international markets. And on present day, she is driving the expansion in Indonesia by building strong partnerships, growing the market, and most importantly, bringing quality fertility care to more patients. Let's go into the questions now. Right, the first question, what makes Indonesia a strategic priority for Alpha IVF Group's regional expansion, and how does it complement our existing footprint in Malaysia?
Right. Thank you very much, Marcus, for your questions. Well, Indonesia is naturally a very strong priority market for Alpha IVF Group as we expand regionally. So first and foremost, we must look at the fundamental from the total population. Indonesia has a total population of approximately about 290 million, requiring about estimations of 360,000 IVF cycles annually, versus the number of IVF cycles that was performed in year 2024. It was about 15,000 IVF cycles initiated, and hence then you see the IVF gap is really significant in comparison with the total population. So Indonesia has these very large populations, and yet the fertility treatment penetrations remains relatively low. So this tells us that there is this huge untapped market, and with many patients is still underserved or not yet even entering into the treatment pathway. And then secondly, you see there is a very strong connections with our Malaysia operations, where approximately 30% of our international patients, they are actually from Indonesia. They either come to us as their first choice of fertility treatment providers, or even after experiencing an unsuccessful cycles elsewhere and are seeking for more advanced solutions. So the demand is already there. It's just that historically, people have to cross border in order to access it. So more importantly is that we see it more like a responsibility or a calling for us to be there and then step in closer to the patients. So I would say that this is not just about complementing our Malaysia footprints, but it is building an integrated chain of support across the group. So in which we are creating accessibility, continuity of care, and scaling impact, not just by having an expansion for the sake of presence.
That's a very detailed answer as well, and I catch the part where we are bringing it to the patients that really need it. It's really purposeful as well in terms of how this is being strategized. Right, so just a question though, judging by the answer, by doing this, isn't it cannibalizing the market of Alpha IVF's existing presence in admin centers in Malaysia that have been serving these very same Indonesian patients, and in turn then make them go to Indonesia instead?
Well, Marcus, that is a very fair question, and let me explain it to you. I think superficially, yes, it looks like we are cannibalizing on our market, where we are trying to sieve our international patients, particularly the Indonesia one, from the Malaysia center to the other center. However, I think it is more like a shallow segment, I would say. Because in real fact, it is actually more about expanding the overall market rather than shifting from one to the other side. You see, today, the patients who travel to Malaysia, they are already of a very specific market. They are very well informed, they are financially prepared, and they are willing to go overseas in order to procure the IVF treatments. And to that, you see like the centers from Alpha IVF Group, including Alpha IVF from KL and Genesis IVF from Penang, we have produced more than 10,000 IVF babies from the Indonesian parents over the 3 decades of our service. So this successful couple, they will continue to speak the legacy of Alpha IVF Group and introduce us to their family and friends, and that will continue to create the ripple effect. So that's just one layer of the market. However, in reality, there is a much larger group of patients in Indonesia who have not even heard about fertility journey or even know about fertility treatment abroad. That's probably because maybe there are lack of awareness or even accessibility or the perceived complexity about IVF treatment. So by establishing our presence in Indonesia, we are actually unlocking that broader base. We are bringing our care closer to the patients, lowering the barrier of entry and to go deeper into the market, guiding them into the system earlier to start their fertility journey. So instead of taking the patients away from Malaysia, we are actually growing the total funnel. So it is not a zero-sum game. It is about building a continuum of care. And with that, we are confident it will ultimately bring impact across the both markets.
Right, that covering the part of lowering the barrier, the accessibility, and building a total funnel. Yeah, that's really answered the question, and I'm sure the audience grasped that very well as well. So we see the intention now. Right, so moving on to the next question. Right, so with 3 satellite clinics already in place, and also 2 full-fledged IVF centers that we have in the pipeline, how does this phase approach support sustainable growth for Alpha IVF?
Yes, literally. So for the pipeline for Indonesia development, it is actually a very intentional approach. And it is very much related to the questions that you asked earlier. And I would say that our strategic partner is actually about building our sustainable growth rather than scaling it too fast where later on then we will lose on the quality control. So when we have our satellite clinics, they will act as our very first layer of entering into the market where they will allow us to establish our presence and then understand the local behavior, building the trust with the community, as well as build the referral network. So we started by serving our existing Indonesia patients. So by having our satellite clinics, they can go there to have their follow-up treatments, to top up their medicines, and consultations with the doctor while they are journeying through their IVF treatment. So the satellite clinic acts as a support and lighten their IVF journey. And we must remember that IVF itself is very relationship driven. So this step come in really, really critical. Then at the same time, this satellite clinic will act as a funnel because as they help to build us a consistent patients database, then by the time when we launch our full-fledged IVF center, we are not starting from ground zero. We already have a base, we already have the demand and the patient trust in place. So then come the second phase where we then have our IVF center. So this is where then we introduce a more advanced procedures and technologies locally because by then we already have validated the market through our satellite clinics. Then because with that then the IVF center then can ramp up more efficiently and operate at a healthier utilization rate from the start. So overall, I would say that this 2-phase model of satellite clinics and the IVF center, they will work harmoniously in reducing the risk and improving our capital efficiency and ensuring that when we scale, we really scale with both quality and sustainability in mind and not just by speed.
Right. Thank you, Siska, for the very well structured answer as well. I believe the audience is really capturing the part where we do not just go by speed, we also ensure that the quality is in line as well with Alpha IVF.
Correct.